We're joined today with Simon Rogers, who's the founder of Enjoy Being You. Simon is a high-performance mindset coach for young footballers, helping them with both emotional skills on and off the pitch. Simon, can we begin with you telling our listeners just a little bit more about yourself, your journey, and how you came to be running Enjoy Being You?
Yeah, absolutely, Emma. So I have to start when I was a young boy. So like a lot of young boys, passionate about football, and in many ways, I probably loved being myself, enjoyed being myself, hence the name of the business, Enjoy Being You. When I was in between those white lines, it was easier. It was like I could just play, I could just be myself. So, and you know, when you enjoy something, you have a chance to develop skills very quickly. So you tend to get good at things, and that's really, an essence of my work. So I'll fast forward to that later, but it's an important time because I think that's where I discovered my passion for football, because my whole journey in terms of setting up Enjoy Being You, it went away from football for a while, and it's then come back to that passion that I felt as a young boy. So as a young boy, I got good at it, playing football, and I was at a Premier League academy, Arsenal Academy, at the age of 11. I was there for 2 years. I'll be really honest, I didn't like it. I really didn't enjoy the experience, and there's context to that, and it's also 25 years ago, which is showing my age, but I want to be honest, and that was my experience. Nothing to do with necessarily the club. It's more to do with, I think, in general, the culture that was present at that time. Fortunately, it's very different now.
Yeah.
So professionally, I became a physiotherapist. I actually studied in Holland, so moved over when I was 18. Studied physiotherapy for 4 years. I became a lecturer soon after, so I got the experience of teaching, that kind of knowledge about the body and how it works. And I was fascinated by how we work as human beings, not just how we deal with physical pain, but what keeps that in place, and a broader, more holistic perspective of what it's like to be a human being, which drove me further to study more. So I studied osteopathy in Belgium. I was living in Holland at the time, so I did that part-time over 5 years, and then I came back to the UK and started my business. At the time, it was then working in private practice as an osteopath, and using my physiotherapy skills with lots of physical pain. But the more I started to work with people and really getting to the nub of the issues, so much of it was emotional with long-term pain. There's a lot of context about that, but I started to work more in coaching, not football coaching, but professional coaching then, and bringing those skills of how do you deal with emotions, and how do you feel them, how do you release them, how do you ensure they're not having a grip on you, and that became more and more my work. And that's when football came back into it. That's when the passion for football came back into it, and I set up Enjoy Being You, and using those skills that I'd learned along the way to really get to the nub of issues and help people really navigate the challenges, predominantly the setbacks that they're experiencing. But the way I see setbacks, and I teach a lot of clients to see setbacks, not as like a fluffy approach, but to see it as an opportunity, as a portal to growth, and not in like, oh, you're growing, but actually you grow into the person you are. You feel more settled in yourself. You have a totally different approach in how it feels to be you relating to setbacks. The heart of the work that I do is working with the individual, with that young person, and helping them understand themselves, because it's that through that self-awareness and that ability to self-regulate and to be able to genuinely enjoy, not reframe and go, yeah, I should be enjoying this. There's a should there, which is actually creating guilt. No, actual genuine experience of I'm enjoying this. And if it's not yet. Okay, so then we start to peel back the layers of how come, what can we support you with, what skills can be developed, just like you're passing, you're shooting, you're dribbling, what skills in you, because we're always growing. As long as you breathe, you'll be working and growing as a human being. And I think that's the point of life in general. So, you're never this perfect ideal of yourself, and you can always strive to be more. And to be more yourself, and most of that's peeling back layers rather than trying to think, I should be more, I should be right. It's actually peeling back the layers to come back to who you are when you're really enjoying things. So I can go into more specifics about that, but in essence, I think there's so much that could be done to support that individual and helping them understand themselves. I mean, it's so hard as a parent in terms of their approach. Like, if I look at my own journey, I probably spoke more to my granddad than I did my parents. And my parents were, you describe them as incredibly supportive, as me as a human being, not necessarily like me, Simon, as a footballer,
Yeah.
but me as a human being. And I think that's, you put the person first. And I think like that is the case for most parents, that they just are, doing their absolute best to put that person first and support them because it's their child, they love them. And so, but it's not always the easiest positioning as a parent to be able to, help that child see, because sometimes it's not the context set by the parents, it's by the whole environment, right, of seeing themselves as a footballer, and that's what they want. And no, I do see myself as me, but sometimes it's so head of agenda, like no, I want to be a footballer, there's nothing else, and all these kind of narratives.
Yeah.
So it's quite tricky as a parent to ask. Sometimes it almost feels like over managing or micromanaging, or feeling like that as well. I don't know if you can relate to that at all. If you manage, like, how are you doing? Do you really want it? Do you enjoy it or not? I don't know how it would feel for you.
Yeah, and it's right. And I think it's also a tricky one, because if they've had a good game, yeah, I'm enjoying it. And then if they've had a bad game, it's like, well, not really. But when kids come off the pitch and they're still got all the adrenaline going, having a conversation of that kind of nature is just not what parents do. And I've seen it many times, and I'm probably guilty for myself. Sometimes we just get it wrong. Like we don't say the right thing to them at the time. So then it kind of think, they'll bite your head off. So, and it's like, okay, let's just not have that conversation. Let's just talk about what we're having for dinner now. And I think it gets brushed aside a little bit of actually, are you enjoying it? And I feel that there is an element of parents that want it more than the child does. Sometimes. And then there becomes a bit of a fear factor for the kids to actually be really open and honest about how they're truly feeling.
So, I mean, it's great. It brings up some points that makes me think about it a little bit more in terms of what's useful to share here, because I think if it's at the narrative of are you enjoying it related to your performance, that's a different question, right? That's the surface level of course you're going to enjoy things more if you're performing better. But I think the question needs to go deeper than performance, because you're still almost approaching it as the identity of you are the player. Do you see what I mean? The questioning is with the context of, I'm asking you, my son, daughter, the player, football player, are you enjoying it? Well, no, I didn't because I lost. Yes, I did because I won. So it's still not approaching that kind of deeper experience of them, that, that they need to know that they are valued and they're supported as a person. And sometimes that's so hard to kind of broach, because they might already be, really feeling particularly sensitive about it, or there's difficult emotions there. But I think it's that ability to hold a space for those emotions that then helps the relationship to talk at that level, even in the heat of the moments of things. And sometimes it's a case of just backing off and waiting for a moment, and sometimes building that relationship of connection beyond the performance over time as well. Saying no, it should be already there. But that's something you work on. That's even as a parent, like in a child, you think, it's intrinsically there. No, not at all. I have a little boy, he's 3, and I can see there are times when I need to back off and give him the space to kind of process things and relate to things as well. And I think that's a constant dynamic, that you're building a relationship with them throughout their life. And I don't think we, as a parent, need to be so critical about, oh no, my goodness, of yourself, or feel guilty about things. I think that happens quite a lot. Parents feel like they're doing the wrong thing, but it's not quite as simple as that, I don't think. The pressure is such an intangible thing, right? There's nobody who's going to grab hold of it and quantify it and say, like, this is what it is and this is how it exactly shows up. The pressure always shows up internally. for somebody. And there are different models of like looking at it, but one of the big models that I work on in terms of self-awareness of like, how does pressure sharpen you? Remember working with individuals, support them with their experience. Well, you have internal language and you have internal behavior. So what I mean by that is internal language is the thoughts that are in your head. So that happens with, what do you say to yourself that creates that pressure? Because whatever's happening outside of you, how you feel that pressure is actually how you create it in yourself. And that's something that is, it's quite confrontational to start with. And some of it is like pre-programmed. So you're kind of having to roll back layers as you become aware of it. Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, so that's one. And the second one is internal behavior. So there's sensational experiences in your body, sometimes created by the words that you say in your head, but also just there as like a gut feeling. And so these two together drive that experience of pressure. So you have to learn to, how do you regulate that? How do you reduce that feeling? So say, for example, bring it into this conversation. We have a conversation, we've met for the first time, and you might like, I'm on Zoom, I'm on a platform. How do I feel safe and how do I feel comfortable with it? You would be doing different techniques maybe to relax yourself, whether consciously or unconsciously. Because that's always the case with human interaction. There's always a degree of not knowing and a degree of uncertainty. So it's that brutal kind of honesty and of noticing, and have the ability to actually calm that down, right? To be able to diffuse that. And there are lots of different techniques, conscious breathing, for example. But even these models, like one that I really briefly shared with you, of just noticing what you're actually thinking in your head. What's the content of language in your head? It's very trainable to do it in action in the moment.
Yeah.
And this is what I work on with young people, is that they can do it in the moment when they make a mistake on the pitch, for example, give the ball away, concede an own goal, that they can do it in the heat of that moment. Notice actually what they're saying in their head, what they're feeling in their body, and actually start to relax it down to get back to an experience where they're not actually under pressure. They don't feel the pressure.
Yeah.
They feel a sense of calm. To a varying degree and to a degree that they practice, but that's absolutely accessible.
Yeah, that's amazing. So it's really just number one, is how I'm understanding it, is being aware of what you're doing, and then number two is having the tools to overcome that and not allow that one mistake or your own goal, give the ball away, to actually then continue to have that impact for the rest of your game.
Yeah, absolutely.
What about self-confidence?
It's tough to say, but there are different types of self-confidence. There's a self-confidence where there's not that much awareness of yourself. It just kind of is habitual. It's just kind of natural, and it's based purely on your ability to navigate situations. So you've got like technical skill to get out of a certain situation. You've done it so many times. You have that experience, and it gives you that sense of confidence through past experiences with it. But there's also a deeper level of self-confidence, because if you're talking about somebody who's actually going to have a career in football, and not just a career in football, they're going to have multiple careers. If they're going to have a career in football, they're going to have multiple careers. They're going to have lots of transitions, and it's going to be a challenging journey for them. However positively it's painted, becoming a professional footballer is one of the most challenging things you could ever do with your life. And challenging means not only that it's going to be things that you're going to love, you're going to have massive lows that are lower than most people, if they go through a typical lifestyle, will have. So you're going to have a confidence that goes well beyond just being confident in your ability to navigate things on the pitch. You're going to have a confidence in yourself and who you are, and have an ability to navigate changes in identity as well, because things will change and the way people look at you will change. So you need to understand how you see yourself and understand yourself way beyond the identities of how people see you. So that's a self-confidence that I think you can already nurture and support young people with, that are talented footballers. And I think that's really, really important, to be incredibly proactive in terms of mental health, but also in terms of well-being and enjoyment of their career. Not just that other people see, oh, you've had an amazing career, but they genuinely enjoy it. Because if I'm brutally honest, I think there are lots and lots of professional players that don't actually enjoy it. I think the first thing is to be present, and what I mean by that, I'll give like a simple example relating to my own life with my son. So my little boy Milo, he's 3 years old, and one of the principles that I agreed with, together with my wife, we decided, because it's really important to be present for us, is that we said, like, Milo won't see us have a mobile phone in front of him, so he will I'll be honest, and that's relaxed in his last year of his life, like so far. So for 0 to 2, it would be incredibly rare that he'd see us on our phones in front of him. So either we'd step out of the room, or we'd explain at a minimum like what we're doing that's so important, or something like that. But most of the time we just wouldn't be on our phones in front of him. And it seems like a really simple thing, but it's more about, we made it very clear that he's the most important part of our lives. It's not as simple black and white as, if I'm looking at my phone, this is more important than you, Milo. But if you are going to make somebody a priority and something a priority, then it can't just be an idea. It's got to be exhibited through your behavior. He will then have the opportunity to recognize what's the difference between really being there and not, from somebody else, but also himself, for himself.
Yeah.
Does that make sense, the last part? For him.
So then that becomes a skill that he's got.
Exactly. So
it's almost like subconsciously
exactly that, yeah. Exactly. So he can hold more attention, or he can be curious for longer, or he can stay with uncomfortable experiences for longer, or he can lean into when he's really, really joyful and having fun and playing with things. And that's always been really important to us. So does that give something that's quite practical? Because it's a foundation, I think. If you don't have that, if you don't come at it about presence, all the other things are just techniques. You need it all breaks down to, can you be present with yourself?
But I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it, from a parent? So how are you doing? Like, how are you doing? Like,
how are you in there?
Let's stop and actually listen to that response and that answer, and look for the signs to actually see how someone is doing and how they're feeling, rather than just it's become human nature to ask that question and actually not really listen to the answer. Really good point you're sort of touching about phones takes me back to social media. So we're in an era where pretty much everyone's got it. Young adults, they have it. Where do you see that? Is that having a positive or a negative effect on players, and should there be some kind of rules in place that I know professional clubs, they lock them away prior to games and things, but where do you see that with young athletes?
Yeah, I mean, to give some context, I wrote an article in the Parents' Week about this, referencing Mo Salah. Mo Salah created a rule at the training centre at the coffee bar. He said, like, there's no phones. So all his teammates have agreed there's no phones, and the reason being is because then you're more present, right? But if we look at it scientifically, what's created by going on social media is dopamine. So dopamine isn't a bad hormone, it's incredibly good, it's a reward hormone, but it's that it comes at such constant low doses and repetitive that you just get rewarded quick, but it's at a kind of very low level. So that kind of deeper staying and paying attention becomes inaccessible. You're training your physiology to only keep a low level of attention. So things that take more effort, deeper kind of concentration and focus for yourself and your environment become less accessible to you because you're not training them. Right, so that's one of the many effects of, for example, scrolling, because you get this kind of reward, but without any effort.
Yeah.
And so that's the thing that,
very fast.
You're training.
Seconds, next one, 5 seconds, next one, and yeah, it's like in a kaleidoscope, like noise and things happening.
There's a phrase that I think has some truth in it, is how you do anything is how you do everything. So how you approach scrolling has an impact on how you're going to show up on the pitch. To, like in a simple example, it will have an impact. It will have a detrimental impact. Whether you're aware of it or not, it will, because you'll be less focused. You're going to scan the pitch with less ability, with less focus, because you haven't trained that level of awareness. You've actually trained it the opposite way.
Yeah, so it's like a totally negative effect.
Yeah, so it's not to say it's that, social media is a terrible thing. It has benefits like all technology, but it's a thing of it not ruling you, and you having, consciously deciding, where your boundaries are with it. And not just like going, I can kind of notice that I'm still on it and time's going by, but I still want to be here. I think everybody's been at that point and noticed, like, why am I still doing this? And then they keep scrolling.
Yeah.
Right? It's to actually use those points of awareness to go, no, come on, let's stop. Right? Or have clear boundaries before, or just put it away, or whatever, for you to choose. Yeah. And that's the important thing.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I mean, I'm very guilty of it myself. Pick up the phone because I was going on to look for something, and then I've seen a notification, and then I've scrolled, and I was like, what did I even pick up my phone for? And it's like, in seconds, that attention went from being, I was intentive to do something, and then it was gone. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Completely gone.
And that's great to notice that, because I think everybody will relate to that. You can notice, like, there's this urge to do it, because that's the thing, is that it's not this wrong that it's there. It's a case of going, okay, now I notice this impulse. The impulse has been created by the behavior. Yeah. So I need to look at, like, what's my relationship with the social media in my phone, and can I change that? And do I want to change it? Because it's not about, the guilt is a judgment about it, and actually that often blocks the opportunity to make a conscious decision about it. So I think that's a really important part, is that it's very common for people to feel guilty, but guilt never changes behavior. You have to make a choice beyond it. It never really drives anything beneficial. You don't get back to enjoying something. You don't get back to choosing a new decision through guilt. Yeah. And so that in itself is like another layer to making a positive change, being aware of that guilt kind of pattern habit that is so common.
Yeah. I think everything that I hear you say, we're just taking it back to one word, which is awareness. It's kind of really seeing it, seeing the trigger, seeing what's happening. Yeah. And then clearly when people work with you, they then have the tools in place to kind of work out some strategies of how to...
Absolutely. The work for them, yeah.
Yeah. With the work that you do with young athletes, do parents have a huge role to play as well in what you're doing?
First and foremost, it's about that young person and how they see things and what's their kind of internal environment. And I think it's the empowering them first and foremost. Because I think as parents, it's quite common that we think, we're nurturing the whole environment. But you'll see that there's very much an individual there, and they see things differently. They see things differently, approach things differently. They've gone through a different experience, and so that I think it's putting them first. And parents do have a big impact. Big impact, and so it's important. But I think it has to start with that person, that young person, and their engagement in it. That's what I've always found, and there's so many that I've worked with young people where there's so many parents said, Simon, I would really like you to work with my child. and they say, I've mentioned it to my son and my daughter, but they feel a little bit hesitant about it, right? They don't know you or whatever, and they're wondering, is it actually, do you want it for me, Dad? Do you want it for me, Mum? And so there's that barrier about it. So it's always got to be the young person who actually connects and makes the decision for themselves.
Yeah.
Is this really, is this for you? Because you can see by the conversation, it's about that self-awareness, which requires a real concentration. It requires that depth to be willing to go there. It requires a relationship and trust.
Yeah.
So it's not always right that every single young person is going to connect with me. Right, there are lots of other people that do something maybe similar to me, but they do need to make that connection. So they need to decide if it's right to go, yeah, I think I'd like to work with Simon.
And a level of emotional maturity, I guess,
absolutely. They're not ready.
Somebody to help them do what they want to do.
Agreed.
What's the number one thing that you see parents doing and you think, no, don't, it's really detrimental, don't be doing that, don't be saying that?
I'm very mindful of not being critical, because it would only be a case of, just observing, something that I see, but it's only useful if the person sees it in themselves, right? So you can share some feedback. I mean, I'd rather say, support them to understand themselves, let them see themselves as a person. You don't worry about them, so you need to set high standards, you need this, you need that, and constantly creating that kind of comparison between, somebody who's here and somewhere where you're there. Yeah. And so you're not staying accountable to these standards. It's not the parent's role to challenge and create performance. I think that's the coach's role. And I think that's the healthiest situation to have. So if you've got a parent who's also the coach, I think it's very, very, very tricky to have an environment where you actually connect with them as your son, daughter, and as an individual that's not just a football player. I think it's very tricky. So I would leave the coaching to the coach, and be a parent would be my strongest suggestion. And I think that's the healthiest thing. And actually, I know it sounds counterintuitive, but actually that's secondary output from that. They will perform better. People perform best sustainably when they enjoy what they're doing, and the way they enjoy what they're doing is they don't have interference. They can focus and flow, and they're not thinking about things. So as a parent, I'm very mindful of not creating that interference, being that interference in there, and the best way to do it is be the parent.
Yeah.
It might sound brutal, but that's
their cheerleader, but don't interfere. You just mentioned flow, and I read something recently that you wrote about having flow. What do you mean by flow? And then how do we get flow on the pitch and get the most out of our players?
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of jargon, right? Flow hacking, but essentially it means, a lot of people say, oh, I'm in the zone. Everything felt right and it just happened and it worked. And, it's that state that creates high performance. High performance comes out of that state. So a lot of people, you ask them, go back over their best performances, they'll go, so what are you thinking? Nothing, actually. I wasn't thinking anything. Right? It just happened. It just flowed. I was just in this zone. And so there's all these kind of typical expressions, but you can see it's very much what we've already been talking about. It's that state of being present. And, there's lots of approaches that I integrate into my training is, taking it from meditation and mindfulness and emotional regulation, conscious breathing, all these approaches that essentially minimize the interference, the stuff that's built up, whether it was, in your head, what you say to yourself in those moments, or what you feel in your body as sensational experiences. And these can create interference to that zone. So it's those times where you go, oh, how on earth did I get here? Where I wasn't thinking anything and I didn't seem to be feeling anything. It's just like whoosh, this kind of void. But it's about how could you create that? And there's a long answer to that, and there's a lot of training and there's a lot of processing, but in essence it's the thinking and feeling nothing, and then it happens.
Is it like when you drive in your car and you get to the destination and you just think, how on earth did I get here? You didn't really think about, I'm turning left, I'm turning right, we get to that junction. It just happens.
There's an aspect of it in that, because you could say that that's autopilot, if you like, right? It's just happening.
Mm-hmm.
But I think the flow's a little bit more than that. So it's not just that it's unconscious behavior and it happens. I think that in the flow, you're also conscious that it feels amazing. It's just this amazing feeling. There's this, you're not like caught up in your thoughts. There's a nothingness there, and it's just like your legs are just moving. And you're not like driving it. You're not constantly pushing. It's happening, and you're there. You're not drifting off. You're there, absolutely, but you're not doing. You're not trying. You're not driving. So it's very interesting because it's quite contradictory.
With these techniques, is that sustainable, that we can get back into that zone easily and regularly?
It's a great question, because I don't think it's about, we often approach things in a kind of perfectionistic way. That's kind of part of programming, and to see things black and white. But I think it's a great, there's this clip that I share with a lot of clients from Novak Djokovic of how he says, actually, I know I need to be present because presence creates my performance. But actually, it's not about being present all the time. I'm not trying to stay in the present. I'm trying to notice whenever I'm not and get back to it as soon as I can.
Oh, yeah.
And he said that the biggest factor that was taking him out of being present was emotion. So it's how quickly can he accept the emotion that brought him back. So it's, if you've ever practiced mindfulness, you sat down and done some meditation, you'll probably you sit there and you go, oh, I'm not here, I'm not focusing. It's come back again. And it's the coming back that's important, not that I'm here, right? It's that how quickly can you come back? When do you notice, and when do you come back, and how do you come back? That's more important. Yeah, I mean, you have to implement it to you as a person. You can't apply it to you as the footballer. It goes deeper than that, and that makes it accessible for you on and off the pitch, which makes it even more impactful. But I mean, I can give you a simple exercise, a really simple exercise, one of the first ones that I work on with most clients. And it's as simple as, if your attention, your focus, you're not able to choose where you hold it, and it just flits from here to there and everywhere. But one of the things that you can do to already train that is to firstly realize that it's an internal thing. So you can close your eyes, and if you're willing, Emma, I can guide you through it right now. Are you up for that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. So imagine, like, if you close your eyes, and I'll keep my eyes open just to give you some guidance, is I want you to choose a point behind your eyes. So imagine almost like somebody's drawn black pen behind each eyeball, or even choose like a point in your eyeballs. Mm-hmm. And you just imagine that there, and that's enough. And you just hold your attention there and then you go, and whenever it drifts, you just bring it back. Mm-hmm. Whenever it drifts, you just bring it back. No need to feel guilt or anything else. And if you do, you just notice that. And all you do is you bring it back. And you notice, like, how kindly can you bring it back? So it doesn't matter if it's gone, it just matters that you bring it back. Mm-hmm. And it stays there. And if it doesn't, you bring it back. So, okay, Emma, you can open your eyes now. So you could try that without any guidance from me. You could try that with your eyes open, looking at a blank wall. Mm-hmm. Right? Now, if you imagine, you can upgrade that to a point where you can go, so a client that I was working with last week, whenever a mistake happened, a setback, it could be a really minor thing. The opponent scores a goal. Right? Probably not that minor, but let's say opponent scores a goal, right? And then his challenge was to go, okay, I need to put my attention behind my eyes. I'm going to do it with my eyes closed really briefly. I'm going to do it with my eyes open. And it just gave this point where you could break the constant kind of narrative of how things were going,
Yeah.
and just feel a little bit different about it.
Yeah.
And that in itself made a massive difference for him.
And then get back to what he's doing. So do it for a short
focus back on him, on
Don't
his
be standing
performance,
on
not
pitch
that I'm now one
for 30 seconds. Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah, such a simple technique, but clearly you're seeing that that's making a massive difference.
You can build it out, it goes far further, but just starting with that is a massive impact.
Yeah, and that's really helping with focus from that.
Yeah, deep kind of presence that you're already creating.
Yeah.
So I'm a big advocate of helping them just enjoy things, become aware of themselves and enjoy. And I think that's first and foremost. If they don't have that, there's no point setting any goals. And it sounds like brutal, but I don't think there is any point, because they're not actually genuine advocating for a specific goal. They're not going to be absolutely deeply emotionally invested in it and know that it's theirs and that's what they want to do if they don't have that kind of platform in themselves to go, this is what I really want. So it's really hard. If they're in a really tough space, I don't think that goal setting is the best approach to drive them out of it. I think it's a case of, let's look at how you're actually feeling, what you actually need to enjoy this experience. Is this right for you? What do you need in this experience? So, there are times when that's a little bit different. I even wrote an article not too long ago about, I think it was Tamori, who was when he was at Chelsea, and his dad's he went to Chelsea for the first time, and he was there, and he was like, I'm like a small fish now in a big pond, and I don't like it, Dad. I don't want to go back. And his dad said, no, you're going back. Right? And it's not necessarily that he set a goal for him as such, but he's gone and said, this isn't about you becoming a footballer. This is about you challenging yourself. And when an environment's here and you actually do want it, because we've had conversations about it before, and I know you do, son, because I know you well enough. You do want it. You're just scared of, not being that person. Now you're challenging the identity rather than actually who they actually are. And so I know it sounds like a bit of a contradiction, but you see, there's not one size fits all. However, I would say you don't bring goal setting into it if somebody's not actually enjoying their experience, or they're not, that's not the thing that makes things sustainably better.
Yeah. And we talk about enjoying yourself. That's what you want to see these young people doing.
Absolutely.
What happens when they don't? What do we do? What as parents, we want the best for our kids. So where do we place ourselves when they say, just not enjoying it?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, it's, life is going to have constant setbacks. So, enjoying is not like a fuzzy feeling of like, I'm in this blissful state all the time. It's about how you navigate those setbacks. It's that kind of inbuilt resilience. And a big part of the approach of enjoy being you is resilience. And it's a kind resilience, a resilience that's honest, and a resilience that's self-compassionate and able to regulate how you actually feel, so that you can get back to enjoying. But of course, you have to ask the question: if you are in an environment and you really understand yourself and you're still not enjoying it, are you in the right environment? And that's a healthy question to ask, of course. So, I've worked with young people where their parents have, they've been on trial for lots of different academies, and their son or daughter just can't feel like they fit in. They always feel like they're on the outside of things, and they're coming back and they're crying, or they just feel look like a shell of themselves. And I can think of one mum who was talking to me. It's like, I just can't stand it. He's just suffering so much, and I can't bear it any longer. Like, should we take him out? Like, shall I just make the decision for him? And all these kind of questions. So I know it's incredibly tough. But I think that at a certain age, and it's really hard to say what, if it's 16 or what, when do they have that kind of real self-advocacy? But I do think that you need to empower that individual to support them to make a choice. And if they're really young, then I think it does come down to the adult to make that decision and do it the best that you can.
And then it takes a strong adult to take away that emotion themselves.
Yeah, it does.
The
It's
dream
really
that
tough.
they maybe had for themselves that they're living through their children, to actually push that to one side. This has been fascinating, this conversation. Where can our listeners find out a bit more about you, get more resources, and can they connect with you if they want to explore this further?
Yeah, there's multiple ways, like through my website, enjoybeingyou.co.uk. I produce a weekly article for the Parents' Week, so you can find that on LinkedIn as well as on the website, which is actually on the Football Week website, .org. And you can find the articles on there as well, amongst loads of other brilliant articles and magazines. And connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I always love having conversations with people, learning from their experiences, and if I can support in any way, always happy to do that.
Really, really interesting newsletter for me to be reading as a parent with boys playing football. So
I'm really glad.
Thank you very much for your time, Simon. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure.